Good afternoon. Thank you very much to all of you who are joining. I know we're going to expect a few more people to come in imminently, but I wanted to start this off and get to the meat of the program. My name is Samir Mehta, and I am the president of the South Asian Bar Association of North America. We are thrilled to have you here today, which is part of our Corporate Counsel College series, today sponsored by Carlton Fields. We are thrilled to have Carlton Fields be our most recent sponsor of this event and put on this fantastic talk today between Rahul Ranadive and Ashwin Krishnan. I'll give brief remarks introducing both of them and then let them get to the meat of the show. And just for those of you who are interested in this, the Corporate Counsel College is an initiative from Sabah North America to get programming that is specifically focused on topics that are of importance to in-house counsel. And we are always looking for anybody who's interested in presenting from either in-house side or the law firm side to join up. So if you have any interest in talking about programming for Corporate Counsel College, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to me, Samir Mehta, Tara Raghavan, or our Corporate Counsel section chairs, and we would be happy to connect you up and get going. Without further ado, I'm going to jump into my intros of Rahul and Ashwin. Rahul Ranadive is a partner at Carlton Fields, where he has been for the last 5+ years. He focuses his practice on tax issues, and he is also a stalwart supporter of Sabah North America. Currently, he is on our executive committee, serving as our treasurer, and has worked in many years in the past in a variety of other capacities. So we're thrilled to have Rahul and Carlton Fields here today for this event. And Rahul will be talking to Ashwin Krishnan, who is the Vice President and General Counsel at the Miami Marlins, where he's spent, I believe, the bulk of his career, if not all of his career, working initially as AGC before becoming VP and General Counsel. Ashwin has graduated of Harvard Law School and has some interesting background in other organizations, notably the Boston Celtics. I'm sure in our discussion today, Ashwin will touch on sports law issues and what drew him into this area. But I think that takes me through my intros. Thank you very much, Rahul and Ashwin, for being here to talk, and please get on with it.
All right, thank you, Samir, and welcome, Ashwin. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Yep, thank you for having me.
We appreciate your support of Sabah.
Yep, happy to be here.
All right, so let's get right into it. We'll start off with the first inning here. So tell us a little bit about your background. Where are your parents from? How did they come to India? What's their immigrant story?
Yeah, my parents have been in this country now just about 50 years, so it's been a long time for them in this country. My dad is South Indian, Bangalore, and came to this country initially to pursue graduate studies as an engineer. Worked for a couple of aircraft engineering companies. Eventually settled in San Diego, and that's where I was born and raised. My mom is actually from Malaysia. She's ethnically Indian, but born and raised in Malaysia, where there's a large Indian community there, and came to the U.S. shortly after my dad first came, and eventually joined him in San Diego. And they've been living there, like I said, almost 50 years now. So it's definitely they're definitely part of the community and part of the fabric, and have a great immigrant story.
Yeah, no, it's very relatable. I'm sure everyone out there can kind of relate to that. Our parents, came here, worked hard, and we're kind of getting the benefit of that.
Absolutely.
So you said you grew up in San Diego. Okay.
Yep.
Did you play sports in high school?
Yeah, I played really just tennis. That was, as a kid, my parents put me in everything: baseball, soccer, football, all sorts of different karate, archery, anything you name it. They tried to see what stuck. Unfortunately, I was not as athletic as maybe they would have liked. And so, tennis was a sport that I was somewhat decent at, and something that I pursued and played through high school and into college as well. But that was really the only sport I advanced past, intro level. So ending up in the sports industry was not something I think they saw coming based on my athletic or lack of athletic prowess.
Well, again, that's, I think, very common for a lot of Indian families. I mean, just if you get beyond the typical pressure of be a doctor, be a doctor.
Yep.
And then if you're not a doctor, be an engineer, be an engineer. lawyers were kind of low down the
Somewhere
scale.
on that list,
Right.
but not as high.
But yeah, I don't think there's very many families saying, yeah, my kid's going to get a scholarship and get, the NBA.
Right.
So let's dig a little bit about that. Let's find out why you think that is. And I don't know if you know Jimmy the Greek. You
The
remember who he was?
predictor, yeah, way back when. Yeah.
Football
Yeah.
prognosticator.
hmm
You remember the controversy about him and why he got fired?
Yeah, he said some kind of racially insensitive things. I don't recall the specifics, but I remember it was pretty controversial and obviously led to him being off the air.
Right. So hopefully I won't have my Jimmy Greek moment. I won't be fired. But so my theory is that it's just physical, right? I mean, you don't see very many Indians who are 7 foot
Yeah.
to make the NBA, and I had the play. I was lucky. I got to meet the Indian national cricket team twice.
Oh, wow.
When they were in the Caribbean, and I was amazed. I mean, they were not much bigger than me. They were like 5'7", 5'10". But then when you see baseball players, or football players, I mean, like compared to me, they're all like giants, right? So, I mean, that's we've had a few South Asians in football and I guess in college level basketball. I'm not sure if at the pros.
There was a Symbol who made it to the Kings. There's a couple in baseball. They made a movie. I think it was called $1 Million Arm.
Yep.
A couple who made it in baseball. But yeah, I wonder that. I've been wondering that for a long period of time. Why is it that we don't see more Indian professional athletes? Particularly in the major sports here in America. I think a big part of it is cultural. I think you hit it on earlier. My parents, looked at sports as kind of something that we just did for recreation and, something to keep us occupied and keep us out of trouble. They never kind of focused on it as this is kind of what you're going to be spending the most of your time on. It was do your schoolwork, do more schoolwork. We'll make up some schoolwork for you to do. And then here's a little bit of time to kind of go run around and, play baseball or soccer or whatever it was. So I think certainly in our cultures, particularly coming as immigrants to this country, there is maybe less of an emphasis on athletics or playing baseball or dedicating the time to kind of go to coaching. And really, it's kind of, I do think it's kind of crazy how specialized at a young age, our youth sports have become. Now being in the baseball industry, I see it, where young kids are already working with pitching coaches and, doing pitch counts and pitch analytics and all of that. And I just, part of it troubles me that at such a young age, we're forcing these young kids into, you're going to be a pitcher at age 7 or something. And that's all you do. And, so you blow your arm out or something horrible. And it's just, it's sad, but I do think there's that element of it. But I also wonder, with 1 billion people, I look at Yao Ming. The Chinese have been able to produce some great athletes, in basketball, and now in baseball too. I mean, we've got some folks from the Taiwanese leagues. We've also got South Koreans, Japanese have done very well in baseball. Why haven't Indians done better? Particularly as you pointed out, cricket has a lot of similarities to baseball in the bowling motion and the batsmen and everything going on in that sport. So I wonder if that, again, if that is just the focus of, cricket is played not really in America, and in the countries where it's played, that's where they groom and tailor their young athletes towards, and there just isn't a focus, kind of on developing the specific set of skills for, let's say, baseball. I know the NBA seems to be very progressive in terms of setting up offices and development leagues and academies in India and in China and some other Asian countries, and in Africa now they have an NBA Africa League. So I do think there are steps taken to kind of globalize some of these sports and develop talent, because again, when you look at 7 billion people in the world, we're not doing our jobs as professional sports leagues if we're not looking everywhere for the best talent. So hopefully that changes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think India could have a top level soccer team competing at the World Cup if they were just willing to divert a little bit of money away from cricket towards national soccer.
Maybe cricket, chess, a couple of other sports that are big in India. Absolutely.
So so not at the physical level, maybe not excelling at the professional sports, but there are a lot of South Asians at the executive level and the management level, working as agents, yourself, your boss, saying, and then there's an owner, right, in the football league.
Yep. Shad Khan. Yep.
So, maybe we'll succeed in not on the field, but
that's at least what I tell myself. If you're not going to succeed on the field, at least find a different path, a different way, because again, that's we're all passionate about the sport and the business of the sport, and we all have to find our own path kind of into that world.
Yeah, that was quite a revelation in high school, at senior in high school, 18, when I figured out I wasn't going to be taking over for Wally Backman of the New York Mets. Had to figure out another
Backup
path.
plan.
Yeah, backup plan. And here I am. All right, let's move on. So second inning now. So after you San Diego, you went to where'd you go to undergrad?
Harvard.
Oh, Harvard for both.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. And what was your major undergrad?
Government, which is political science, similar. Yeah.
And at that time, when you were an undergrad, were you kind of thinking about law and, you know,
Yeah, I think, well, let's see. So first, when I first got there, I actually, applied and entered as a computer science major. So I was very much focused on what my parents.
There's some
Yeah.
AC in you.
Yeah, well, that's very much focused on what my parents told me the path was and where the good jobs were and where the money was and all that. But when I got there, I realized very quickly that I wasn't as good or as talented or as interested in computer science as some of the real geniuses that we had there, and kind of said, okay, that's probably not for me. What else is there? And thankfully, as a freshman in college, you take so many different courses, you get exposed to so many different things, and I kind of fell in love with and really interested in U.S. history and politics and all of that. And so that's what led me to becoming a government major. And as I started taking courses and getting more familiar with kind of that world, I realized that there are many lawyers in that field. Having a law degree seemed to be helpful. Critical thinking, decision making, drafting legislation, whatever it may be. It seemed like at least having that set of tools would be very useful to me as I progressed further in that government political science realm. So it kind of became a natural thought of, okay, I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. Thankfully, my younger brother wanted to be a doctor since age 5, so that covered us as a family. And so I didn't receive any pressure to be a doctor. So I ruled out doctor. Looked at some of the other graduate schools and kind of said, okay, that's probably not for me. That's probably not for me. And law school was kind of one where I'm like, okay, I like to talk, I like to argue, I like to think in that way. Maybe there's a fit there. And so it was almost a little bit by process of elimination that I kind of said, okay, let's kind of prepare to go to law school.
Okay. And did you take some time off between?
Yeah, I did. So I spent 1 year. Again, I was, as a senior in college, or junior, senior, somewhere in there, I kind of, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I said, okay, law school seems like the right path for me. But, I kind of looked at what some of my colleagues were doing, and I kind of said I'd like to try a few different things. The first thing I did immediately was I spent a year abroad at Cambridge University in England, learning about the EU and European politics. I kind of said, okay, there's a lot of folks that are going abroad, getting a broader education, learning more, traveling a lot, which really appealed to me. I, as much as I got my degree there and enjoyed it there, I think I equally enjoyed the opportunities to kind of travel around Europe and really, take weekend trips everywhere. Everything is just so close there. And, it was just kind of a different type of education of a lot of the cultures and things to offer in Europe. And then after that, I spent a year at LEK Consulting, management consulting in Boston. That was another kind of path where I looked at and said, oh, a lot of my colleagues are doing these case interviews. A lot of folks are going to these management consulting firms. Seems like another useful set of tools to have to learn how to evaluate businesses, to put presentations together, and just be a consultant. And so I tried that for a year, learned some things there, but ultimately said, okay, this probably is not for me. I don't think I want to spend the rest of my career doing this. And then, finally found my way back to law school, which kind of was sitting on the back burner there. And I said, okay, let's go ahead with that law education. So went to Harvard again for law school. And that's where I kind of found sports law.
Mm-hmm. So does Harvard have a kind of defined track for sports law?
Well, it's funny you asked that because they do now, but it was kind of in its infancy when I was there. When I arrived, I think it was September of 2007, we had a sports law class, like one class, and then a very infant kind of sports law society for folks that were interested in this field. Handful of members, didn't really have a ton of events, but the group at that time that was there, and I was just kind of a first year, but looking back at the third year class and the second year class, there seemed to be kind of a groundswell of folks that were really interested and really passionate about this field. And so together, we were able to do a lot in terms of organizing events, bringing speakers to campus, really going to conferences as a group together, having others to kind of talk to about this world and this field and figure out, how to get internships, how to get into the field. And so we really, did a lot in terms of trying to build up a program on campus and really make it into one of the specialties. I mean, you have folks that come in and want to do international law, that want to do labor law, antitrust law, whatever it may be. We wanted to make sports law kind of a more of a defined track rather than just a one-off class and then you kind of move on with whatever. But we thought that this was a field we were passionate about, that we wanted to do everything we could to build up the program.
Are you still involved? Do you go back and adjunct teach there?
Yeah, so I've done so two things. Yeah, so one of the things I did while I was there, I think this was towards the end of my second year, and then all of my third year, was actually founded a Journal of Sports and Entertainment Law. This effort had been tried, I think, 10 years ago, and there just wasn't enough support. But again, with the encouragement of my peers and others there, including faculty and some outside practitioners in the area, they really thought this time was right. We have a handful of journals that focus on other specialties, and given the interest and the explosion really of Harvard alumni in the sports world, we thought the time was right. And sure enough, we got all the support we needed from students, from faculty, from all the other relevant folks in the administration, and we were able to launch that at the beginning of my third year. And that's been a way for me to kind of stay in touch with and continue to help build that program and help grow it. And yes, on the every once in a while I'll go up there and guest speak, or now, which is great. One of the great things about the pandemic is how great Zoom and these virtual panels are, because it allows me to kind of be a lot more places than having to physically travel somewhere, take time off and all that. You can quickly hop on a Zoom and do a guest speaking appearance, or appear on a panel, or whatever it is. And I've really enjoyed being able to do that.
Excellent. All right, so let's move on to third inning here. Let's see how well you know your team. So I'm going to throw out some dates.
Okay.
You kind of tell me what happened in Marlin history on that date, and try to recall back and think and remember where you were on that date. So June 10th, 1991.
Yeah, that's when the franchise was awarded, and baseball in South Florida was going to become a reality. I know there's a history of groups trying to bring baseball to South Florida, and that's when the Florida Marlins became a reality. And Wayne Huizenga really did a lot to bring baseball to South Florida and make it a reality for everybody down here. So yeah, very important date.
Where were you? June 91.
Yeah, that I was in San Diego somewhere. I was 8 years old in San Diego somewhere. So
all right. That was the day I took my LSAT.
Wow. Okay.
And the next day, June 11th, I moved to Miami.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a very memorable day for you
exactly.
too. Then.
Very coincidental. All right, April 5th, 93.
That was our first game. Charlie Huff throwing that first pitch. It was again to think back to those days and seeing all the teal. I'm so thankful you brought this hat to remind everybody of those days, and the excitement of having 70,000 people at what is now Hard Rock Stadium, watching baseball and professional baseball in South Florida for the first time in a long time. There had been some semi-pro and minor league teams here, and if you go back in the history of South Florida baseball, but to actually have a Major League Baseball franchise, up and running was a big accomplishment.
Yeah, definitely. That was a great day.
Were you there?
Of course. I stood in line to buy tickets the week before or earlier. I was there, inaugural day. That's right. Charlie Huff. It was my 25th birthday.
Wow. Again, are these your dates or are these the Marlins dates?
It's kind of an intersection of the two,
That trivia I'm going to do a lot worse at, guessing what these dates meant for you.
You know what else happened on later that night?
I don't.
That was the Chris Webber fifth.
You went. Okay, yeah.
University of Miami,
Michigan, yeah.
March Madness.
Yeah,
that happened later that night.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, October 26, 1997.
Okay, October 97. That's easy. I mean, that's the first World Series championship in Marlins history. Edgar Renteria hitting that single and against the Indians, and Craig Counsel running home, and it's a memory that plays in our hallways, and we have the TVs and some of our highlights, and that's always one of them. And even though I wasn't there and wasn't really following the Marlins franchise that closely at the time, it gives me goosebumps now, having been there 11 years and knowing our history and knowing really knowing what it meant to this franchise, and to have the parade down Biscayne and the joy it brought. I mean, that again, for a franchise to win a World Series 5 years into existence is pretty incredible. I think the Diamondbacks topped that in 2001 in terms of how soon they won, but it's absolutely incredible to in 5 years of existence when you draw your whole team just from expansion draft. Really, to put a World Series winner together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the parade, the downtown parade. Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't make the parade, but I'll never forget where I was that night. I had to be in New York for my cousin's wedding. Sorry,
this is not the Marlins history. This is Rahul's
I flew
personal
back to
story.
New York that night. Like I drove as fast as I could from the airport to get home to watch the game. I missed, like most of it. I got literally there, I think, in like the top of the ninth inning.
Oh my, okay. Well, it was an extra inning game, so yeah, you made it just in time.
So we'll skip ahead. We'll skip a couple of these dates here. Going October 14th, 03.
Oh, well, if again we're talking about October, that always means playoff baseball, which is exciting for all of us. And yeah, that's going to be Game 6 of the 2003 World Series, and Josh Beckett throwing that complete game shutout, and beating the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, and what it meant to win the second World Championship for the Marlins franchise. That was under our previous owner Jeffrey Loria, and his second year of owning the team, another moment that, as it plays out in our hallways, particularly now that our CEO was on the other side of that game, is always an interesting one when we see those highlights from the 03 series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was a week later against the Yankees, but the week before that,
what do you have?
Against the Cubs?
Steve Bartman. Okay, sorry. Steve Bartman. Yep. Okay. You want to go to the Steve Bartman game? Okay. Yeah. I mean, again, that's okay. Game 6 of the NLCS. Down, was it 6 runs and scoring, was it 7, 8 in the 8th inning? Moises Alou trying to catch a foul ball, and that led to a whole controversy about how much we blame fans and how people take the game too seriously, and he got death threats, and there was a great 30 for 30 special on Steve Bartman, and that was that really was a flashpoint for the fan player interaction, and again, it's a tough situation. I mean, when all of us put ourselves in that situation, and it's easy to say from the outside how you should react and what you should do, and you should be aware of the score and what you're doing. But when a ball's hit right at you, your natural instinct is to reach for it. The poor guy had headphones on, and has had to live a tortured life since then. But I think now that the Cubs have won, it looks like they maybe forgiven him, and he can maybe live a normal life. But yeah.
Back to Chicago. Yeah.
Maybe he was a Marlins fan all along. We can start that theory.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I watched that 30 for 30 also, and I just felt so sorry for the guy. I mean, it's just so crazy how, in a flash of a second, your life can just be like 180 degrees completely. I mean, here's a guy who's just diehard Cubs fan,
anonymous too. Yeah,
totally anonymous. I mean, just real diehard Cubs fan, and just one small tiny. One moment.
Yeah, just like and a mistake is even a harsh word. I mean, the ball's coming at you. It's like, what are you supposed to do? Like,
and then just everyone around him. It was like, I felt like I even watching it live.
I think everybody felt bad for him. Like, it was just like anybody could see themselves in that situation, being the unsuspecting person who just reaches for a foul ball, and then the implications are enormous. I mean, obviously there's the double play ball that was booted by Alex Gonzalez, next play, and nobody wants to talk about that. Yeah, cascade of errors, but that's the flashpoint, because there's a single individual who everyone wants to blame.
Yeah, I remember watching that game live and just kind of being like, man, that guy better get out of there, because I thought it was a mob gonna be.
That was a dangerous situation.
Eventually, security came and said,
I had to get him out of there.
Yeah, you better come with us. Yeah. So, all right, and then October 25th.
That's Beckett. Yep.
Josh Beckett.
Yep.
Against the evil empire.
Our current CEO is on the field and has to walk by the 2003 World Series trophy every day as it sits right in front of our lobby. So, always curious what his thoughts are every time he passes that by.
He's probably like, yeah, I got 4 or 5 of those.
I got 5 of those, but he doesn't have to see them every day.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on now. 4th inning. So let's talk a little bit how you started off in your career. When you got out of law school, you started right away. You knew sports was what you wanted to say. How did that come about? How did you know sports management? And then how did you know you wanted to be on the team side as opposed to like being with MLB or the league or like an agent?
Yeah. So I think the short answer to that question, which I'll give and then I'll move to the longer answer. Short answer is, coming out of law school, chance to work in sports, you take it no matter where you're going and whatever the circumstances are. It's such an exciting opportunity that, for me, I would have taken it wherever it would have been. The longer answer is that, as I mentioned, while on campus, I was very passionate about sports law, like, really wanted to network, meet people, go to conferences, reach out to folks for advice, whatever I could do to kind of, give myself a better position to try to get, somewhere in this field. And, on the side, I still did the law firm thing because I figured, most likely I'm not going to end up in sports. I'm not going to find an in-house job right out of law school. So I'll go to law firms over the summer, hopefully get offers and have a very solid backup plan once, this whole sports fad passes and I need to become a real lawyer. So I was able to secure an internship. And I know we'll get to it first with the Celtics, my second year, and then my third year with the then Florida Marlins. And my boss was general counsel at the time, and was very clear with me. Hey, this is just an internship, not a full-time job. We only have one lawyer. Our administration just doesn't believe in having lots of lawyers. So I'm the one lawyer, and that's going to be it. But it's great to have your help. What happened during the course of that year was that we got the new ballpark approved. Marlins Park, now Lone Depot Park. That became a reality over the course of that year while I was an intern. And I think the work was just overwhelming. And he kind of realized towards the end that, hey, if there's any, he needed the help, and he kind of told me, I'm going to make the case. I'm going to go internally and see if I can make the case for a second lawyer. The pay is not going to be great. I can't tell you much about what you're going to be doing, but I just need the help and I need another body here. I said, no problem. Take your time. This is such a cool opportunity. I had really enjoyed working remotely with him, and said, you take your time. I'm going to, in the meantime, move out to California, take the California bar, and prepare to go work at a law firm in California. Halfway through the summer, he calls me. He says, hey, I've got great news. I was able to get the position cleared. Are you still interested? And I said, absolutely, yes. He said, do you want to know the title? Do you want to know the salary? I said, you can tell me those things, but the answer is still yes. And then he told me, okay, I'm going to need you to take the Florida bar, because he wasn't barred in Florida, and thought it'd be useful to at least have one Florida barred attorney. So I switched bars, took the Florida bar, and moved here September of 2010. And yeah, over the course of 11 plus years now, I've kind of grown with the company and grown with the organization, and it's been a very exciting, and I've learned a lot and have enjoyed the chance to kind of occupy a variety of different roles, which I'm happy to kind of talk through as I've grown there.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't appreciate about that. The GC department, the legal department of teams, is very small.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, maybe 1-2 lawyers max.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're coming out of law school, hunting for jobs, the traditional law firm recruiting route, lots of opportunities. But yeah, I mean, it's and a lot of time, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very rare that someone comes straight out of law school into these GC departments. It's usually someone that's been an outside counsel, or maybe involved as like a limited investor, but come in as a senior.
The biggest reason for that, and you're totally right, the biggest reason for that is that, as you mentioned, these legal departments are so small, they're not really built to train you as a lawyer. They're not really built to develop you. All the experience that people get as a cohort of associates, or as you grow up, grow together. Law firms have great training programs, great development programs, but career-wise, professionally, personally, how to be a lawyer, how to deal with clients, all of that stuff. How what provisions should you care about, or different seminars and things that you get. I summered at 2 law firms, and I learned so much just from the different workshops and different interactions I had with different types of lawyers. And our team legal departments aren't really built for that. I mean, when I joined, there was 2 of us, and my boss was extremely busy, and I was fresh out of law school. So, it was a bumpy year or 2 years where it was kind of like, this is the best I can do based on all the Google research I've done, or whatever else I can find, and just using my own brain a little bit. And then he would correct me when he could, or where he could. And I think he had seen over the course of the internship, I was a fairly quick learner, and someone who really would take the extra time, on my own time, to kind of analyze what comments he gave, try to, make sure I don't make the same mistakes again. How can I get better based on what feedback he's giving me? I know how he works now. What is he looking for? All of that. And so I think he, again, he took a chance on somebody who frankly didn't have much training at all. And I'm very grateful for that. But, again, on my side, I kind of said, I realize how busy he is. I'm going to have to train and develop myself really, and just use his feedback and his guidance, the parts that I did get to really help grow and become a better lawyer.
So sports definitely was the goal, sports industry, but you were kind of agnostic about baseball, football, like.
Yeah. So, I meant to touch on that. Yeah, I was very, agnostic. I grew up a huge sports fan of baseball, basketball, football, tennis I followed. Those were kind of the sports that I followed. But, I was fairly open, and, I'm one of those people that I wrote, I think I wrote every team in those big three sports a letter, just hoping, for a response. And obviously the response rate is very low, but I kind of said, prepare for a bunch of no's or, no responses, and just kind of go from there. But I knew one thing I did know was, from talking to enough people in the industry, the agent life wasn't for me. A lot of folks have always asked me, why didn't you become an agent? You went to law school, you seem to know the industry, like why wouldn't you go that route? And for me, it was a couple things. I mean, I like the structure of, having a team client and having an office, and kind of, it's not a 9 to 5, but, some kind of a normal business hours. With the agent lifestyle, I think, as most people may have already surmised from the way, things are in the news, you're kind of on call 24 hours. There's stuff that happens all hours of the night, and your player is really depending on you to help them resolve it, whatever hour of the night. If it's 2 a.m. and they're somewhere and they need help, they're calling you and expecting you to pick up. And that leads to my other point, is that industry has so much of poaching and folks that are trying to show why they may be better than you. That frankly doesn't happen a lot. Like, the Phillies lawyer isn't calling my bosses saying, hey, I'm a better lawyer, like, look at me instead of me. So that doesn't really happen as much in our industry. So that was another kind of thing that I didn't really like, that I, again, to talk to real agents and kind of get their perspective on it. But the limited perspective I had was that happens, fairly common, and guys can kind of make decisions based on, hey, this guy's willing to hang out with me and go to the club every night, versus this other guy who's, wanting to, sit at home, or this guy's giving me new watches every day, or whatever it is. There was just that element of, you constantly kind of had other folks chirping in their ear about what may be better, or that they could get you a better contract, or whatever it was. I just didn't like that element of it. I kind of like the stability of saying, okay, I'm going to work for a team. I'll have a job as long as I'm performing well. That'll kind of be more like a normal corporate job. So for me, those were some of the factors why I thought the team side would be better.
Yeah, that's very understandable. From what I've read and everything, the agent life is very cutthroat and very different mentality. But I mean, you must deal with them daily, right? I mean, you're negotiating contracts.
Yep. Not daily anymore, because we are in a lockout, so we're not allowed to communicate, which we'll get to later. But yes, in the normal world, yes, we deal with them frequently on minor things, like maybe a visa issue, or some request for a player to get some equipment, or whatever it may be. So the most serious kinds of things about contract negotiations, whether it's free agent negotiations or salary arbitration or suspensions or discipline, constantly dealing with agents. And again, that's I want to make sure I'm clear. Like, that lifestyle is for certain people, and there are a lot of rewards. There are good agents out there, and I've dealt with several of them, and they're really passionate about helping young men and women be the best versions of themselves, helping them grow from amateur athletes and kind of navigating the world of being a pro athlete, and watching them grow and succeed. And there's a lot of rewarding things in that journey as well. So I want to make sure I'm not just slandering agents altogether, but that that journey and path is for some. But yes, I deal with plenty of agents throughout the course of the year.
Sure. Right. So, I mean, it just happened out that you got the connection with baseball, but I mean, would you really have gone anywhere? I mean, like Edmonton Oilers?
Yeah, I think at the time I was fairly open. I mean, I hockey was not something I was too familiar with, but I was fairly open at that time. If the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Kansas City Royals or Detroit Pistons, cities that I don't really have a connection to, had come calling, I think I would have gone, because at that point I was really really, really passionate about getting into this industry and establishing myself, I now look back and say how fortunate was I to be in Miami of all cities, such a great city, great climate, great lifestyle, things that, maybe I wouldn't have had in certain other cities. But I think that's also what's kept me here, is that this city has so much to offer that I've been very fortunate to have a job that I like in a city that I like.
Yeah, no, definitely it is beautiful down here. All right, so let's keep moving on. Let's delve a little bit more, dig a little bit more into your actual day-to-day life in the Marlins. So what you started pretty much almost out of law school as a entry level.
Yeah.
And then can you talk a little bit about your path and your rise up to the current GC level?
Yeah. So, starting out very entry level, essentially I would just be, writing research memos, redlining very simple contracts, working off templates, creating some basic templates. And it was very much a drafting kind of role where I was just kind of in the weeds drafting. As I got a little bit more senior and proved myself on that, I would still be doing that because I was still the junior attorney, but I also get to sit in on more calls and meetings and things like that, where we were actually negotiating terms or, actually deciding strategy on different types of how we're going to tackle different legal issues that came up with the course of, dealing with the city and the county or whatever else. I was, again, the number 2 attorney, but at the same time, there were plenty of issues, whether it was in our sponsorship group or our special event group or our ballpark operations, plenty of different legal issues that kind of arose that I kind of rose beyond the just drafting a contract, but actually sitting down with them and saying, okay, let's talk through what issue you're facing. Let's talk through whatever problem you're facing. Let's strategize. Let's talk about it. And then I kind of had my own, eventually, so the first kind of 5 years I was in that role, I eventually kind of had my own, what I like to call my own client base, my own set of people that I worked with, responded to, handled their issues. Of course, if certain issues rose up to a more senior level, I would, run it by my boss. But, for the most part, I had, everybody almost below the executive level, below the VP level would kind of come to me and I would help solve their problems. And if it rose up, kind of get him involved. My boss ended up leaving November of 2015. And so I'd been there 5 years and I wasn't sure what that meant for me. I at that point was 5 years out of law school. I didn't know if they were going to bring in somebody new above me, or ask me to leave and kind of rebuild the whole legal department, or what kind of the plan was. Fortunately, our team president at the time kind of looked at me and said, look, you've been at the general counsel side for the last 5 years. The business, the group, obviously it's a big step to now counsel the executives and deal with the executive level issues, but I'd like to give you a chance to at least see if you can do it, so let's see if you can handle it. I said, okay, great. I'm thrilled. Thank you for the opportunity. That's all I can ask for, a chance to prove myself. One of the first things I did ask for was, hey, can I hire a junior attorney now? Because I know it's not a one person job. And I was able to do that shortly after. And yeah, I did that for about a year and a half. Till the point where he was ready to say, you've earned the title, you've earned the role, and got the title and the role. The unique element that kind of came with that was that's exactly when the team was sold. So it was a very tumultuous time where we had a very public process of selling the team. I was the lead seller's in-house counsel, worked with their outside counsel to prepare documents, get us ready for the sale, answer questions, whatever else kind of came up from the different bidders that were involved in that process. And that all led up to this big sale transaction in October of 2017. And right then and there, as soon as the funds were transferred and the sale was complete, I became the buyer's lead in-house counsel, and I had to work with their outside counsel, advise them on the transaction. And really, it was a very kind of interesting time, because at the moment I didn't know what that meant for my future. Many times if lawyers get into it and you get, fairly antagonistic, the first thing you want to do is get rid of that person and say, okay, now that we're in charge, we're going to get rid of this person that we didn't like dealing with. I'm very fortunate this group and the lawyers involved and everybody kind of gave me a chance. I had a chance to kind of present myself, what I do. Obviously they knew me a little bit through the sale process, but kind of really walk them through my department, my areas, and what I do and how I do it, why I do it. And they gave me a chance, which is, again, all I can ask for. And it's been just over 4 years, and I've really enjoyed it. One thing I will say about the role, as general counsel now versus kind of the more junior role, I find myself in a lot more meetings, calls, and kind of strategy discussions, or helping people solve kind of unique issues that come up. It's a lot of troubleshooting, traffic control of, okay, this thing is happening. How does it connect to this? Let's get this person in touch with this person. Let's figure out how this issue connects to this issue. A lot more of that than kind of just putting my head down and drafting. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there are still issues and agreements and things that need to be drafted and that I have to kind of bear down and just block off an hour or two and go ahead and draft an agreement or redline something and call the opposing counsel and hammer through it. But I find a lot more of my day is spent just counseling our lead business executives and our baseball executives. We serve both sides of the organization. So anything going on the trade front or free agent signings or salary arbitration or other issues that come up through the course of the year with both baseball staff and players, as well as our normal business operations. So it's a lot more of truly being a counselor, which we hear, from time to time lawyers referred to. But that's much more my role than just being kind of a drafter.
So with the baseball side of the operations on hold because of the CBA lockout, are you now only working part-time?
I wish. I'm our organization's CBA point person. So each club, MLB kind of asked each club to designate somebody to, be the point person for each organization. So they didn't have 20 or more, like 100 people calling them and asking them, what can I do? Can I do? So I've had to kind of be very good at knowing the rules and what our people can do, what kind of contact is permissible, what isn't, and liaise with MLB. And unfortunately, there are so many ties between, our staff and players and their representatives that, it's every day that I'll hear something of some kind of contact, somebody reached out to somebody. Is that permissible? Is that okay? And have to kind of help navigate that. So unfortunately, the lockout slowed our major league business of transactions, but hasn't slowed kind of the flow of questions or our regular business.
Right. So what do you think was the kind of biggest thing you had to learn moving to the GC level to help you put all the pieces together and, really feel comfortable about the big picture role of your job?
I think the biggest thing I had to learn was just managing the personalities and different styles of dealing with issues amongst our executive team, because as general counsel, you counsel all of our different business units, from our salespeople to our IT people to our finance people, HR, all our different departments, and everybody's different. Everybody has a different style of doing things. Everybody has a different style of how they deal with crisis, how they deal with problems, and really just the toughest thing has always been time management. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and there's an endless supply of issues and things to work on and things to think about, and just kind of figuring out, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have an issue I need your help with, trying to understand that issue and then saying, is this an urgent issue I need to deal with now, or is this something that can wait an hour? Is this something that can wait till tomorrow? Just kind of that balance, because when you're in that seat, people come to you with serious issues. I mean, they're not coming to the general counsel with light stuff. I mean, they're coming to you with serious issues, but there's only one of you. So you can only deal with so many issues at a time. So you kind of have to figure out how to prioritize and how to understand people and understand what their issues are and what can wait and what can't. And so that's always been the toughest part of my job.
All right, thank you. Let's moving on to sixth inning. Let's see some tips from you, if you can maybe have some helpful hints for younger attorneys hoping to follow your path. So obviously your position is very broad. I mean, you have to look at employment law, litigation, contract, everything. You're not like me. I'm like a niche international taxes, geek. But for someone like me, that is a very narrow practice niche area, and may say, well, I want to change careers, I want to change direction. Maybe what kind of tips would you have for someone like that who wants to get a little bit broader and look at opportunities like GCs?
So starting, because I know we have an audience of people at all different levels of practice. Obviously when you're in law school, that's the best time to do something like this. That's, chance to explore, chance to reach out, and everybody's always very, I find willing to talk to people who are trying to figure out what career should I do? What does this actually do? What do you actually do? What are the best types of courses or internships? All of that stuff is very easy when you're in law school. It becomes tougher when you become a practicing attorney, I think, just because folks are, have less advice for you probably, and just are less willing because, it's more sympathetic when you're in law school, and we all remember trying to, be there and trying to figure it all out. I think two things are always, at the top of my list, conferences and networking. And that, like, this is one of those industries, nobody's asking for transcripts. This is not a Supreme Court clerkship. Nobody's looking to see what law review you're on or what transcript you're on. It's all about, knowing people in the industry and kind of building up somewhat of a name where you become a known commodity and someone that people can kind of trust. Because for us, whenever, for example, for us, whenever we hire, there's plenty of applicants out there that are qualified. Like, you look at the resumes, they've got very good lawyers, people that have been at, big law firms, big in-house companies. They can do the work. It's always about kind of the fit and do they understand our industry? Do they understand all the different personalities we deal with? This is not like working at a law firm where you've got a bunch of type A lawyers, around you. You've got a wacky creative person. You've got a sales guy who you may or may not be able to trust. You've got operations people who work crazy hours and email you at midnight or something like that. It's just the different personalities and different folks. So you want to build that credibility that people say, hey, I've had a chance to get to know this person. Obviously, internships or work experience are the best, and you can kind of say, okay, I've worked for this person. They can vouch for me. I'm a decent person. I fit into a sports team culture. But short of that, it's again building that name, building that kind of credibility in the industry. The second thing is as you mentioned, kind of being in that narrow focus. We're generalists. We're folks that need to be able to kind of span across, know a little bit about everything. We're not experts, and that's why we reach out to experts like you when we have an issue in international taxation or a complicated labor and employment issue or a property the immigration issue. Visas does. That's a big area for us. Tax issue or whatever the issue may be, IP issue. When we got these complicated issues, we need folks that we can reach out to who are specialists in that area. But for the most part, we need to be able to dabble across a variety of different fields and know, just enough to be dangerous and that's kind of, whether you acquire that skill set through CLEs or getting more diverse experience at the current firm you're at, let's say, that's always valuable because you want to be able to at least have some basic knowledge about each area, just so, when you get a question, you can kind of give directional guidance to somebody who's coming at you and wanting to know, hey, I'm thinking about this crazy idea. I want to launch this bobblehead using Rahul's face on it. Can I do this? And it's like, hold on, there's name, image, likeness. Let's talk about this. Might need his consent. You want some basic understanding of each of these different areas of law, so you can kind of, again, give them initial guidance. And then if you need to get experts involved, you do.
Mm-hmm. So towards that end, do you actively manage your outside counsel, or do you leave that to your junior attorney? And kind of what are the things that you're looking for when you pick and manage outside counsel?
No, I don't leave that to anyone else. I'm very active in that. I mean, obviously, the Marlins are known for being a low budget team and competing with, the small payrolls that we've been able to put together. But I know the budget's very important for us. And so I know how important it is that I'm actively managed and sit on top of that and stay on top of what folks are billing, why they're billing, and, manage that very actively. But also the relationships. I mean, again, I've been here 11 years. So knowing, different folks in different areas and having that relationship over time, it's natural. I'm working to try to get junior counsel more involved in those relationships to get them exposure to it, but not quite there yet where I'm ready to kind of fully hand off any of those relationships. But yeah, I'm very, very active in terms of managing them. What I look for, I mean, I think, there's a few factors. One is obviously, again, we hit on it again, but price and, cost, that's a factor. I have budgets and I have targets that I need to meet, and I get questioned if, our outside counsel expenses are beyond what's expected. So I need to manage that. But also I think, being reliable, being, able to offer quick advice, understanding that, we're often going to need a quick answer on something and not a legal memo. Having worked with so many different folks over time, we've had, certain folks that, I ask them a simple question on something, I'll get a long memo, email response. And I'm like, thank you for this lovely treatise, but that doesn't help me. I'm trying to solve a quick problem here. I need someone who can give me more practical advice. So that's always been a pretty key one for me. I mentioned, time, because often the issues when we reach out to outside counsel, it's something we need a quick answer on. So it's not like, okay, I get people are busy, but like if they're going to get back to us 5 days later, that's often not helpful. You need somebody that understands the urgency of what we do, the public nature of what we do. That's an interesting one with court filings and things. I carefully review those because, there are certain arguments you want to make as a lawyer and, advance your case, but we also have PR concerns. We also are a very public entity, and so we want to make sure anything we say in there doesn't put us in a bad light or otherwise jeopardize us in some other way outside the legal realm.
Yeah, I would imagine like taking a harsh position against grandma on a slip and fall in the
Yes.
stadium may not be the most fan friendly.
Exactly. Like you don't want something in there about, this is their own fault. They should have done better. Like, whatever. You just have to kind of be careful in terms of how you phrase that, because we tend to draw more interest than a, average defendant.
Right. Right. So you mentioned your time in between college and law school where you did the consulting for a year. What business skills and acumen do you think are important for a GC to understand the business side of the team or the company they work for?
I look back on some of those skills there being, not anymore, but being an Excel wizard back then, and some of those things that I've still remembered and carried over, that's been very helpful. Also just having a sense of how to read a financial statement, cash flows, understanding, as I mentioned earlier, budgets. I'm not the only one with a budget. Everybody else has a budget too. So when, I'm able to speak with someone and say, hey, I want to run this bobblehead promotion or this new slogan or this new logo, whatever it may be, I often counsel them on what the costs are expected to be for outside counsel to clear this, what it may take in terms of MLB, for them to get involved, and those types of things of just being mindful about the business element of how much is this, like how much merchandise are we going to sell with this new slogan, or how much, what is the ROI, and that's kind of I think a key question I always ask across a lot of our different initiatives, because people have all sorts of ideas, and certainly we need ideas. We need to get more fans in the ballpark, but we want to be mindful of the ROI on all of that.
Well, I think the pitch clock is catching up to me here. So I think I'm going to have to skip through a couple innings here and just go straight to the ninth inning. So, will the 22 season start on time?
I hope so. It's interesting that, obviously December, the CBA expired December 1st, 11:59 p.m. I think everybody kind of took a collective breath after that and said, okay, they did what they could to try to get this thing done, but I think everybody took a collective breath and probably got some sleep for a couple of days, because I know those were some nervous nights for everybody. I think as we come here, I know there were some sessions today, but as we come up in the new year upon the potential start of spring training, start of the regular season, those are real deadlines and important deadlines, and hopefully that'll force the two sides to kind of come together and realize that ultimately we want to have baseball. It's good for the game, and we know the devastating effects of a labor stoppage from '94, and so I hope both sides come to realize we can't have that, and whatever it is, we've got to figure out a way to come together.
So that was actually my next question. How do you think the ghosts of '94, '95 affect the current negotiating posture of both sides?
Yeah, I mean, we're at a point right now where I think both sides are kind of marked out their territories and are fairly far apart. But I hope that, again, with folks realizing how bad '94 was for our game, that eventually they'll realize the greater good is to have baseball, have an agreement, regardless of what concessions need to be made, and regardless of how painful it may be to not get some of each side's objectives, that ultimately having the game in some capacity is better than what happened in '94.
Yeah, I think '94 was a little bit different because that was a strike instead of a lockout, lost the World Series. But I mean, quite honestly, it wasn't until Marlins '97 season that really got me re-excited about baseball. Yeah.
I mean, that's for the fans in South Florida, and many credit the home run chase, McGuire, Sosa, and Cal Ripken, and some of these other folks as being key in kind of getting baseball back on our consciousness. But certainly there was a dip in fan interest and all of that, and I think everyone's mindful. I mean, that's a bigger issue that baseball is grappling with, is millennials and how slow the game is and the demographics of the audience. And so I hope both sides will realize at the end of the day we need to have baseball next year.
Yeah. All right. So last question before we go to some audience questions. How do you think MLB's antitrust exemption affects each side's negotiating? I mean, does it really kind of put a shackle around the players' union, because they can't make any antitrust claims against them?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, and I'm going to try to be very general in my comments and not too specific here, but we've seen what happens in other leagues. You can decertify as a union and then bring certain claims. Again, we have the Curt Flood Act, which kind of penned the antitrust protection to certain franchise relocation, minor leagues, and really exempted a lot of the major leagues, from the court case, from what had happened in federal baseball. But I think at the end of the day, both certainly the league realizes how valuable that is, and what it's meant. It does seem to me that at the end of the day, the league knows that this is not something we want to have in front of the courts, and let the courts start deciding things and reevaluating things. So I think at the end of the day, they'll be motivated to reach a deal.
Great. So Samir, do we have any questions from the audience from Zoom land? Yeah, good seeing you, Fred. Samir, we can't, we're too far away from the screen, so we can't see the chat box or the Q&A box where you're collecting questions. Do we have any from the audience?
I don't think so, Rahul. I think you made it so enjoyable. They didn't want to ask any questions.
You even took my antitrust question, so we are actually amazingly going through everything I think we currently have on the list.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Was that a question?
Yeah.
Oh, I said you even took the antitrust question that was top of mind, so.
Oh, okay. I preempted you.
A little bit, very nice.
All right, well, if there are no more questions from the audience, Ashwin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming by.
Me.
And hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Sounds great.
I'll see you at the ballpark.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. Anyone interested in being doing a chai chat in the future, please reach out to me or to Samir or Tara or the heads of the chai chat, the corporate counsel section, and we'd be happy to arrange something. Thank you very much.
I just want, on behalf of Southern North America, I just wanted to thank you both again. Thank you, Ashwin, for making time. Thank you to the Miami Marlins. Thank you, Rahul, and thank you, Carlton Fields, for your awesome support.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.